Why, hello there. Unless you've been living under a rock, I'm going to assume that you know what Notion is. And if you're here, I'm also going to guess that you have tried it and decided that it wasn't quite the tool for you for one reason or another, which is why I want to introduce you to one of my favorite apps that I have been using consistently for the last year. It's called Capacities. And at its core, it's a personal knowledge management app, which is just a fancy way of saying that you can take notes in it. If you're looking for something that is fun, flexible, aesthetic, and also doesn't overwhelm you right out of the box with a bunch of templates and plugins just to get started, then I think you're gonna like this video. So today we're actually gonna be walking through what Capacities is, how it differs from other apps, and some ways that I personally use it. Well, let's get into it. I think the best way to describe Capacities is that it's like Notion and Obsidian combined together, but even more approachable and warm. So if you're familiar with how Notion works, you typically create a page and then you can create another page within that, another page within that, and you keep nesting. So you're essentially creating folders, and there are links, but the links aren't really the primary purpose of it. You're supposed to be able to find things within this traditional hierarchy. Now I know some of you might not know what Obsidian is. It's a little more niche than Notion, but the TLDR is that it's a link-based note-taking system versus the traditional folder hierarchy. Now what makes Capacities unique is that it actually combines both of these approaches into something called object-based note-taking. So all of that means is that instead of being forced to think like a computer and treating all of your information as files, you actually get to treat them as objects. So books, movies, quotes, people, meetings, ideas, the things that you actually consider in real life and that are a lot closer to how our brains actually naturally work. It's a completely flat organization with no built-in hierarchy or nesting. It allows you to create this organic structure, and instead of having to think about how everything is going to be built ahead of time, like what are your areas and folders and your systems going to be, you can just write a note and then write another note. And this is really nice if you're someone who tends to get overwhelmed with a lot of strategic planning at first, or if you're like me and you just find it really fun and you end up procrastinating because you think that coming up with systems and structures and folders is going to make you more productive versus actually just doing the work. So what this more flat structure encourages is that you just get started and let things happen naturally over time. Now again, Obsidian also does follow this same type of structure, but the difference is that when you open up Obsidian, it's almost too basic. I mean, it's just markdown files, and then you have to go and get a bunch of plugins and templates and kind of build up from there. Whereas I think Capacities has done a really great job of taking that initial idea, but still giving you a lot of just like really basic capabilities. And I know this is kind of hard to just imagine in your head, so let me show you exactly what I mean. Welcome to my Capacities workspace or notebook, dashboard, whatever you want to call it. This is where all the magic happens. And just to give you guys an idea of how objects work, this is my sidebar. You probably see this in Notion, Obsidian, any other app you've used. And this lists all the different objects that I have created. So Capacities comes with some automatic objects already when you first open it, but you can create your own types with their own properties. This is how I've currently set mine up. So you can see I have all my media here in different folders. I have books. And just so you know, as I'm showing you guys my workspace, this is very much work in progress. Okay, I'm treating this much differently than I did with Notion, where I don't want everything to be perfected. That is not the point. I don't think that's even possible. That's a good thing, right? Because we don't want to spend all of our time making things perfect. With that out of the way, I'm going to show you also some of my quotes. I just record some apps because I have certain notes on them, some journal entries, and you can also see if you click down, there are different collections, which I'll get into later, but you can access them from here. Now to show you an example of one of these objects, let's go into Meditations for Mortals. So this is my object notebook for Meditations for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. You can see this has different properties here. So it's very similar to working in a database and having a page if you're used to working that way. I can also create properties that link to different objects. So this is like a reference field in Notion if you're used to that. But if I click on this, you'll now see this is a person object. I could also access it over here under people. And you can see that there's a backlink back to Meditations Immortals because that's where I had linked him. So if we go back here, I also have a couple other properties like who recommended it, when I started it, when I finished it. So these are all actually pretty cool features here, which I'll get into that in a little bit, but just keep this in mind that these are actual functioning dates and a functioning tag. Now the only thing is that when it comes to objects, the way you do the settings on these is not the most intuitive. You have to open up this little settings panel for each one, and you can see there's different icons. I actually really love the different icons they have for this. I know a lot of people use emojis, but this is just so much cleaner to me, and I like that the colors can match with the color of your objects. So there's just so many different types, as you can see, and you can also, of course, do an emoji if you prefer that. There's also colors. So in Notion, for example, you have just a couple different colors to choose from, but one thing I love about this is there's so many different beautiful pastel colors, and it makes everything look just chef's kiss. So nice. And for each of my objects, I actually have this color coding thing going on where I decided that all of my notes are going to be blue. Anything that's more of like a personal journal type of thing is pink, and then the rest of my objects that are more like references, so a movie, an article, for example, people, those are all in purple. And then the rest of the ones that are more just structural are down here in gray. But if we go into object settings, again, you can see you can change the name of it, the plural name, so that when it's referenced, it makes sense. There's a description. You can edit different properties. So you can decide to have, blocks in there automatically, different dates. And of course, you can go ahead and move these around in different orders if that makes sense to you. I'm not going to go too far into this. This is not going to be like a technical demo or even just a full tour of my workspace. I just want to introduce you guys to Capacities, get you excited about it, and if you want to see more of this stuff later, then of course I can make more videos about that in the future, so just let me know. Now some of the other properties here, you can change the page layout, which is pretty awesome. So for example, there's a profile layout if you want to have people and you want to show their image up in the corner and all their information here. It's really nice. Encyclopedia is great if you have, like a book or something that you're, like a topic that you're taking notes on. If you're into Zettelkasten or want to take atomic notes or just note cards, you can make it really simple and just boil it down to like the title and what you wrote in there. There's also a standard layout. And then you can customize the card views as well. So let's say I were to link to another book here. So right now, this is an inline link. You're probably used to this in a lot of other note-taking apps, but what you can do is hover over this, click Edit, and then you can turn this into a block. And you can actually go in here and change this, so it could be a link block, it can be a wide card, or you can actually go and just fully embed it, so that now this object, which is a completely separate object, a completely separate book, I'm able to put it into this other book. And if I want to reference it with all of its properties and all of its text, because let's say this is like a book series or I just have other notes, then I can put them in here. And this is one of my favorite features of Capacities. And why this is so cool is because if you look in here, when I'm taking notes, for example, there's this concept called imperfectionism in Meditations for Mortals. And I could just write about that within this really long note for the book. But then what if I wanted to reference this in an essay later or in a script, or I want to talk about it in another book that I think relates to it? Well, I can actually put that note in here. So this note is separate, right? It's its own separate object. And this way I'm able to kind of piece together each piece of writing almost like Legos, and you're able to atomize the different notes so that you can paste them in different places. And this is what makes everything so flexible, and again, why you don't have to create structure ahead of time, because the way I would do this is just write out all my notes as I'm going through my book, and then if I find something like, this quote that I really like, or for example, burnout was another note that I had somewhere else and I wanted to reference it, I can go ahead and create those as separate notes. And if you see this little toggle here, this is actually part of a template that I created for my book objects. So I can hide that if I want, highlights. Anytime I create a new book object, that's already there. So if we go back to object settings, you can see you can create a new template. And the other great thing about objects is you can always change them. Let's say I had this outline I intended to do, which was how do we create meaningful work? And I want to make this into an essay. So all of my essays, as I start actually writing them, I consider them drafts. So I can actually change this into a draft, and it'll change all of the properties or give me a chance to change those properties. I change the type, and now this has become a draft. So again, you can kind of just start with what feels right and then change things as you go. And as you start creating these links in here with different notes, quotes, books, something I really appreciate about this app is that they handle backlinks really, really well. Technically, you have backlinks in Notion, but they're not organized at all. You don't see really very good previews. You can't customize that. But in here, anytime I mention this book, you can see the backlink show up here. And I actually can see the entire object that is linking to it from this object itself. There's also a graph view. If you use Obsidian, you're probably familiar with this. So you can see all of the connections that you're making. And this just gives you a way to see everything from the top down, because I know some people might struggle with figuring out how everything is connected if you don't have an actual hierarchy. So this way I can see that, the book is here and it's connected to a tag, finished, it's all my finished books. 5-star rating, that's another tag. There's different daily notes that I took on it that are connected, and then all of my notes and essays and other books that I've referenced in here are all going to be through these little nodes. And this way you're able to see that, hey, this is connected to Buddhism. And if I click into there, you can now open up the graph that stems from Buddhism. Now, Capacities also has some pre-made objects for you with specific properties. So one of them is daily notes, and daily notes is probably one of the most unique features that this app has. Every day you get your own note that's already created for you, and you can see any object that has a date feature in it. So remember, back when we were looking at the books, it said my book was started on this day and ended on this day. You're going to see that object appear here. So if we go back to Meditations for Mortals and we look at the started and finished dates. So if I were to open this, it takes me directly to November 5th, daily note, which I hadn't written anything in here, but you can see that there's a date reference for that. This automatically comes under here if I were to link that date. And you can also see other things that I created on this day. So it kind of automatically tracks everything that you're doing in here instead of having to write down like, oh, I created this note or link it intentionally. All of it's going to be here so that you have a time log of all of the things that you've done and all the things that you've created. And then you can also, of course, write things in here as well. And if I go to today and I decide I want to write a new note, then automatically it's going to be added with the date added, January 23rd, which is today. And another nifty little trick you can do, let's say I wanted to add my friend Wesley Banana, and I want to track all the times that we meet and take notes on it. All I have to do is say now, and it now just dated the date and time. It only says the time right now because it's today, but later it'll say the date of when I created that stamp. So now this note, met with Wesley for coffee and caught up today. And now if I go to that daily note, you'll see automatically it's been connected into there. So again, this whole journal is kind of happening for you, and it takes away a lot of the work and a lot of the systemizing that you usually have to do when building in something like Notion or Obsidian or another app. One of the other default objects that Capacities gives you is web links. So if I were to take a link to this article, for example, all I did was paste it in here and it parsed all of this information for me. All of the metadata, the image, you can put in music, videos, it's going to take it for you. And then I just go ahead and organize them into, like videos or podcasts. You can also upload PDFs, audio, all your images. Then they also have something called queries, which is similar to like a table view in Notion where you're defining certain properties and you want to say that, for example, essays in progress. This one, I said anything that was within, like brewing, writing, stubs, those are kind of my terms for stuff that is being written. That is also a drafts. I'm actually able to link those searches here so that if I want to create a page of a bunch of different queries, I can do that and create different dashboards. Now, the final object type that I want to show you that is probably maybe my favorite feature other than daily notes, I can't decide, but that is tags. I wanted tags for so long in Notion, and there are ways to get around it to create like a separate database and all these relational links, and it's super clunky and doesn't work, and it's not what Notion was designed for. But tags are a huge part of Capacities, and what I love is that these are actually objects in themselves. So you can see I have all my different topics here. If I want to go into something like videography, I can just click on that. And this becomes its own category object. And everything automatically shows up in here as long as it's tagged with videography. And then I also have different groupings like genres. So I will link genres across different media like books and movies. Also have status for if something has been, finished or needs to be processed. I also have rating tags, so I could go in here and just click on this and see everything that has been rated 4 stars or 5 stars. And you can actually tag within different levels of an object. So again, you can have your own property that uses a tag. You can just tag the object from like a high level, or so if I wanted to tag this with videography, obviously it's not related to that. That specific line from that note shows up here, but not the rest of it, which is so useful for being able to just mix and match different parts of, like the objects and the notes that you're taking. So tags, super, super cool, really useful. You also have something called collections, which is similar to a tag, but only specifically for a certain object. I'll show you what I mean. If you were to go into media, you can see there's videos that all show up here, shows all show up here. Now these are all a media object, right? They all have the same properties, but this way I'm able to organize them within there. And then when I go into my dashboard for media, I can customize this and, create all my collections up here. I can say some that aren't in any collection, so I know the ones that need to be organized. I can have the ones that are recently opened, so I can jump back into that. You can have more queries if there's specific types that you want to see. Tons of ways you can customize this. Now, the way that you decide to differentiate between collections and tags and how you create your objects, that's totally up to you and the way that you work. I would suggest as a rule of thumb to only create collections for things that matter exclusively within that object and aren't going to be relevant for other objects. So for example, my collections for books are reading now, fiction, nonfiction. Those are things that you're not really going to apply to quotes and notes and journal and even movies. But for example, you saw I had genre and rating as general tags, and that's because I want to be able to tag a book as 5-star, and I want to be able to tag media as 5-star. And in here, I actually find that the way that you write things in Capacities is a lot more fluid and less blocky and like clunky than a Notion. I never really enjoyed writing a Notion for some reason. It didn't feel like a standard Word document that I was used to, but it feels much more like that here. So if I write something and I say, hello, this is a line, and you just, write more things here, right, left, pb&j, I don't know what my brain is doing right now. You can move these around similar to how blocks move. I can also take this entire thing, I can create a group, and now this is going to move together. If I want to highlight this, I have a lot of colors to choose from. Again, really nice aesthetic designs here. Again, I can choose to link different things in here, or I can change this into a block. You also have the option to use toggles, and I really like this for writing, because if I take a toggle and take all of this, put it into here, it's very easy to create something in like an outline mode, and you still have this line here that lets you know what is connected to everything. Peanut butter, jelly, and then let's say I want this to also be a toggle. So now you can see this outline is being created for me. So if you want to write and you want to create like outlines or notes, this is really nice for just keeping things clean and organized. So that's the general overview of how it works. A couple other things I did want to mention because I think they are very important features is that number one, this has offline mode. Okay, you can use it on airplane mode, on an actual airplane, or when you don't have internet, or just what offline mode is, and that Notion doesn't have it, and they don't want to give it to us for whatever reason, and it drives me insane. But the fact that we have it here is amazing. There's also AI, very good search functions. There's a mobile app an iPad app. There's a WhatsApp quick dump feature so you can just text yourself notes. A lot of stuff that's just really considerate of individual users, because that's actually what Capacities is about. You might have been able to tell that I've gotten a little bit jaded over Notion in the last year or two. Again, I'm not saying that I'm never going to use it again. It's just for now, it's not really working for me. And I think a part of that is their product roadmap. They've been more focused on catering to businesses. You know, they want to become the next G Suite or Microsoft, whatever suite. And, you know, no hate to them for that. I think obviously they're going to make a lot of money doing that, and people want to be billionaires. So what are you going to do? But the reason why Notion was so great in the beginning is because they really cared about individual users and that experience. And I feel like Capacities, because their entire model is for individuals and it's not a collaborative platform. It's not good with working with other people at all. It's not good at creating public notes. It's really just meant for you and whatever is going on in your brain. And because of that, everything is catered to creating the best personal single user experience possible. And the dev team actually cares. This is a bootstrap company. They have just a very small team that's working to create this, and the devs are so active that if you go into their Discord and you say that you have a bug or an idea for something, it could literally be in the app within 2 weeks. They're not trying to be an all-in-one app. They're not trying to get all of your email and your calendar and everything under one system and then hold you hostage. They actually encourage you to use all the different tools that you want. They encourage you to be messy, to try things, to experiment, and overall they just really care about making a good product. And I don't think until this past year when I really started using them that I realized how much I miss that in tech. I miss the early days of people being passionate and excited to create something that was actually going to change people's lives and make people's lives better. And you feel that with Capacities. You feel that with the team. You feel that when you're interacting with other people who use it. It just brings this warmth and this joy to note-taking, which I know sounds really nerdy and dumb, and I need to go touch grass. If you're like me, you understand, right? Like you want the delight and the joy in being nerdy on your computer and not to have it feel like it's sucking your soul or trying to take your money. And just I really love this app. Okay, and I'm not saying that because this is a sponsored video. I'm saying that because I've genuinely been so excited to wake up and write in this every day. I'm excited to have something that is flexible and intuitive, easy. It works with my brain. It lets me think and write and create the exact way that I want to and doesn't force me to meet its structure. Especially for someone like me who can be very OCD and perfectionist at times and can be triggered by certain other apps in that area, this has just been very good for me. And I hope that you'll give it a try. And if you do, I will leave a link in the description below. Otherwise, let me know if you want me to do any demos, tours of my workspace, tutorials. Happy to put something out. If there's any other apps you want me to cover, I can look into that as well. Yeah, thanks for being here and sticking with me through my several-month hiatus. Hope the year is going well for you so far. And I forgot how to do outros because it's been a while, so I'm just gonna stop talking now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.